Terrific. Okay.
Let's go.
Oh,
Cheers all.
hello. Happy spring, everybody. I hope so anyway. Cheers to you all. Welcome to you who've arrived. See if anyone has. I just think a couple of people have said they're tuning in tonight, which is terrific. Saturday streaming number 20, Chloe.
Yes, only a few to go. We've decided to give it a bit of a rest at the end of November. We will have done 22 Saturday streamings by then.
Mm-hmm.
So, then the job of cataloguing begins.
Exactly, yeah. We hope to dig in. There's been some good work done on our behalf by our mate Ian in terms of cataloguing the songs and getting ready to give you some different ways into what amounts to a lot of songs. Yeah, a lot of songs.
22 times 90 minutes.
Been looking forward to this one very much, though. In Remembrance. But yeah, welcome. For those who are tuning in for the first time, this is our little studio in our little village of Millthorpe in the Tablelands. I'm looking at cameras and a painting of John Dengate, and 250 kilometres away, I can see Sydney. Hi, Sydney. Where we have a gig coming up in 2 weeks. How nice.
We do.
Back to the Loaded Dog Folk Club, back to gigs. This is Wiradjuri country, the land of the Three Rivers, the Macquarie, the Womboom, the Lachlan, the Kalare, Murrumbidgee. Always was, is and always will be Aboriginal land, and we feel very, very lucky, fortunate to be able to call this place home. It's the best place in the world.
We think so.
We think so. This is in Remembrance tonight, and look, it's an idea that came about for us anyway. It's been sort of floating around the back of my head that the 11th of the 11th seemed to come up often in Australia's history. These days, of course, we think of it as Armistice or Remembrance Day, and it's the end of the First World War that we remember, and we always do. But there's some other things too that happened on that date, and for us, Remembrance Day over the last quarter of a century, for half my life thereabouts, has meant Majors Creek Festival. It's a really grand festival. I'd say half of those years in there we've been down for Remembrance Day. Lots of Remembrance Day concerts at Majors Creek. For those who don't know, Majors Creek is just near Braidwood, and it's a wonderful festival. It's changed a bit over the years, but not much really in essence. Nice size, good camping festival with real venues. I love a festival that can put on 1 or 2 real venues. They've got a great hall for dancing and for concerts. And they have a magnificent church, St. Stephen's. And we were there in 2017, and we'd done a lot of Henry Lawson on the Saturday, I remember, and we went over to watch some music in the church, and I was reminded that the foundation stone for St. Stephen's was 1870, but it was the 10th of the 11th. It was close enough, to make me think of Remembrance Day. So we put together very quickly an impromptu kind of themed concert for that day. And this is the song we opened with that day. And we'll start here, and then we'll see where we go to. This is the Hat Ned Kelly War. It's a song that dates right back to Kelly country, just after the Kellys. We got it from Jacko Kevans, so that's where we learnt it. He changed the tune and arranged the song, and we've since changed it again, but we got it from Jacko. That's where we learnt it. We thank him for it. He learned it from Alec Argus. It goes right back. But anyway, the Hat Ned Kelly War. Why? Well, I bet you all know Ned Kelly was hanged in the big jail down there in Melbourne at 10 a.m. on the 11th of the 11th, 1880. Okay, so we'll be thinking of Ned here, and then we'll think a bit more about Ned a little bit later in the show. But it's also one of my favourite opening songs and favourite bush songs because it seems to bring that warm heart that the best bush music does, the Hat Ned Kelly War.
Yes, and you can imagine it, somebody standing up singing it unaccompanied to you, as Jacko sang it at a few sessions at Woodford. I can remember one anyway. Yes.
Just getting the comments up close. I can see.
Okay, who's talking to us?
Oh, it's quite soft, they're telling us.
Okay.
Oh, goodness. Well, if it really is that bad...
Do you want to turn it up a little bit?
Yeah, okay, we'll have to, guys. Maybe. All right, my friends. Hello again. Hopefully that's all working okay, and I've certainly turned up the microphone a bit. So, yes, the Hat Kelly War from Jacko Kevans. A warm-hearted greeting to you all, and a welcome from Milthorpe.
Good evening to you one and all, good luck to what I say. I've just stepped in amongst you all before I go away, and I've brought with me the relics of the good old days of yore, and I'll sing for you a song about the Hat Kelly War. Oh, it was made of rusty iron, the finest ever known. It was worn in 1880 at the hotel at Glenrowan, and it terrified the troopers, the minions of the law, when they saw it in the morning mist, the Hat Kelly War. Now my name is Larry Doolan, I'm a true Australian man. I was born of Irish parents in the township of Willan. I can sing and dance with any man when I take to the floor, but I curse the day they trampled on the Hat Kelly War. Oh, it was made of rusty iron, the finest ever known, and it was worn in 1880 at the hotel at Glenrowan, and it terrified the troopers who terrorised the poor. 'Tis a relic of the hero, the Hat Kelly War. About your Homburgs, your stiff-brimmed Panamas. You can talk about your war caps, all fine colours and bright stars. You can search Strathbogie Ranges, Timbuktu or Singapore, but you'll never find the equal of the Hat Kelly War. Oh, it was made of rusty iron, the finest ever known, and it was worn in 1880 at the hotel at Glenrowan, and it terrified the troopers who terrorised the poor. 'Tis a relic of the hero, the Hat Kelly War. And if ever I return again my native home to see, I hope you'll in the old bush way a welcome give to me, with songs about the Kelly gang to cheer me o'er and o'er, and make me want to see again the Hat Kelly War. Oh, it was made of rusty iron, the finest ever known. It was worn in 1880 at the hotel at Glenrowan, and it terrified the troopers who terrorised the poor. 'Tis a relic of a hero, the Hat Kelly War. Oh, it was made of rusty iron, the finest ever known, and it was worn in 1880 at the hotel at Glenrowan, and it terrified the troopers who terrorised the poor. 'Tis a relic of a hero, the Hat Kelly War.
The Hat Kelly War, and of course the reference there in remembrance on the 11th of the 11th is that's when Ned Kelly was hanged in the Melbourne jail. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. Yeah, Ned had come up to central Victoria. Well, his father, Red Kelly, had been a convict at Port Arthur and in Tassie, Van Diemen's Land. And there's every possibility. No one really knows when Ned Kelly was born, but there's every possibility that it was 1854, and it could easily have been the 11th of the 11th, 1854. It's as equally likely as any other date in that time. Some people say 55, but let's go with 54. That's the best fit for the story. Red Kelly was at Port Arthur, by the way, with Frank the poet, Francis McNamara, the convict bard. So we'll just bear that in mind. Frank the poet was there. But yeah, 1854 was a significant year, and the 11th of the 11th, 1854, was significant as well.
Indeed, the 11th of the 11th in 1854 at Bakery Hill was the last legal gathering of the miners who were protesting about the licence tax. It was their last legal gathering, and they drew up a document. They called themselves the Ballarat Reform League. And Raffaello Carboni was there, and he notes that the political changes they were contemplating were a full and fair representation.
Still waiting.
Manhood suffrage.
No, small steps.
Yeah. No property qualification of members for the Legislative Council.
Look out, Tories.
And also to that, payment of members.
Yeah, well, that one, we could get a lot of good out of that one, couldn't we? Pay peanuts, get monkeys. And do you really want the only people running for Parliament, the people that can afford to do it for nothing?
It sounds, yes,
unfair.
All right, and a short duration of Parliament.
Yes, well...
So a chance to change things.
Days, minutes, I don't know, yes.
So, very powerful stuff. But you'll notice, working within the law, they were looking for representation.
We're going to sing to represent the rebellion at Eureka and the flag of blue and silver stars. We're going to sing a Denis O'Keefe song as a best... It's a contemporary song. It's a song from not that long ago, and Denis, well, he had a terrific way of writing a song, wrote some beautiful songs. And in this case, he'd come across a letter.
And this letter was written by a Chinese man, Yick Young, who was in the goldfields, and obviously had a very, very difficult time there. But Denis was struck by how the multicultural landscape, and he tried to capture that in a song of his called The Ballad of Yick Young. Should we set it up a little more? Yeah,
I think so. We're just a couple of grabs about Eureka while we think of the 11th of the 11th.
To give you an idea of how that manifesto might have been welcomed.
Yeah, something to remember. There was historian Jeff Hocking who wrote, "Men of all nationalities were targets for the troopers and goldfields police. The governor had often expressed his distaste of foreigners in the colony and was fearful, almost to the point of paranoia, of the influence of political agitators with a Republican bent." Now, I certainly hope there's no one out there tonight that might fit that category.
Well, William Howard said at the time, the foreigners were at the head of these disturbances. It was they who were foremost in the fray and who were chiefly shot. This is as might be expected, and marks the low, red Republican foreigners as a very bad element on the diggings, a class of men far below the lowest English in a knowledge of the principles of moral reform and progress, who have no ideas but of physical force and the demolition of any existing authority. This class requires the closest attention of government. One Chinese woman and 16,000 men landed at Robe, and Yick Young was one of them. In the 1850s, when the gold rush was on, quick to Ballarat or the gold might be gone. And in New South Wales, 3 men had struck gold, and down in Victoria there's worlds to behold. Gold fever spread throughout every land. There's gold in Australia to be picked up by hand.
Australia to be picked up by hand.
Hear the wattle rustle, Yick Young spirits walking.
Sound of pick and shovel and old miners talking, still digging for gold. That's an old miner's right. The ghost of Yick Young is working tonight.
Irishmen laughing while the English were proud. Chinaman working and Scottish pipes loud. Americans boasting, Germans dancing, the Welsh always singing and Frenchmen romancing. Greeks and Italians with stories to tell. Maoris and Muslims and Hindus as well. Nations united, all in one land. And the old Aboriginal just couldn't understand.
The old Aboriginal thought they were all mad.
Hear the wattle rustle, Yick, young spirits walking, sound of pick and shovel, and old miners talking, still digging for gold. That's an old miner's right. The ghost of Yick Young is working tonight. We swear by the Southern Cross to stand truly by each other,
And fight
to defend our rights and liberties. That bloody license tax made the diggers unite, and under one flag the miners would fight.
29 men died on that fateful day.
While the ashes from the license tax were blowing away. Rise up and fight, sons of liberty. Rise up and fight for this land to
Come
be
on, rise up and fight for this land to be.
Feel the wattle rustle, Yick, young spirits walking.
Sound of pick and shovel, and old miners talking, still digging for gold. That's an old miner's right. The ghost of Yick Young is working tonight.
Here in Australia, the life it was tough. With grog shops and opium, Yick Young had enough. In his rain-sodden tent, Yick Young sat and cried. He wrote down his letter, then he lay down and
Wrote down his letter, then he lay down and died.
Rustle, Yick Young spirits walking,
With the sound of pick and shovel, and old miners talking, still digging for gold. That's an old miner's right. The ghost of Yick Young is working tonight. What a treasure that letter was that Denis found. It would be a mighty feat of imagination to imagine exactly what Yick Young saw there. And one thing he definitely did see and know was the man Peter Lalor, who led the rebellion and lost his arm in the battle, and as a revolutionary got a lot of changes made, and then was elected to Parliament in Victoria. Another example of Victorians doing the right thing.
So they got there in the end.
So they got there in the end, yes.
Now, when we were looking around for more November 11s, as you do, we came across a wonderful article by Claire Wright in The Conversation online, and she found two other good ones. On November 11, 1845, the explorer Charles Sturt abandoned his search for the inland sea, leaving his boat on the edge of an infinite desert. And on November 11, 1861, the Royal Society of Victoria made the decision to send natural scientist Alfred Howett to Cooper Creek in South Australia to find and bring back the remains of Burke and Wills. There's another one for you.
Yes, but the big one, when we think of the 11th of the 11th, and in this case in 1869, it's 100 years before I was born on the year, was the Aboriginal Protection Act, which basically deprived Indigenous Australians of any sense of, or any reality of self-determination. I hate to think of it like this, but in some ways I feel like the Protection Act was, we won the war, now these are the rules, these are the terms. The newly empowered board for the protection of Aborigines controlled where Indigenous people could live and work and with whom. And again, language became a problem. We mentioned last week how wonderful it is to see so much Wiradjuri being spoken in this part of the world again. Well, it only just got through, and it is thanks to Stan Grant Sr. and CSU and some others. And now you can hear great swathes of eloquent Wiradjuri. It's a real pleasure. The only thing we can do to acknowledge the damage of that is to give a little bit of a white fella's perspective, if you like. This is Denis Kevans' poem, "Ah, White Man, Have You Any Sacred Sites?" And it was written in 1984. It was written in response to the Western Mining Company and Hugh Morgan have been pushing through a mining development in northwestern Australia, and the local Aboriginal people resisted to the point of protest, and Hugh called them in the press nothing but a bunch of pagans. What a magnate. So as we go through here, we've already sung about Bakery Hill and Glenrowan, and we'll be continuing the Explorer's Tree, the Dig Tree, and Burke and Wills. Of course, we know we do have sites that mean a lot to us, and probably is every likelihood we do have sacred sites, but it doesn't mean Denis's question's not worth asking, I think. Ah, brother, I'm searching for the sites sacred to you, where you walk in silent worship, and you whisper poems too, where you tread like me in wonder, and your eyes are filled with tears, and you see the tracks you've travelled down your 50,000 years. I'm searching around Australia, I'm searching night and day for a site to you so sacred that you won't give it away for a bit of coloured paper. Say a church you're knocking down, or the rocks, a nation's birthplace, by the bridge in Sydney town. Your cathedrals I've entered. I've seen the empty aisles where a few knelt in sorrow, or where all the children smiles at big cathedrals full of beauty, opal glass and gleaming gold, and an old man in an overcoat who'd crept in from the cold. Now your schools, I've drifted through them, heard the sound of swishing canes, heard the yell of angry teachers crushing flowers in our brains, heard the bark up on the rostrum where the powers had their say. Wouldn't children's hearts be sacred, though they're made, like mine, of clay? Or where's your wonder? Where's your worship? Where's your sense of holy awe when I see those little children torn apart by fear of war? Or what is sacred to you, white man? What is sacred to your clan? Are your totems rainbow feathered? Is there dreaming in you, man? Sacred. Oh, so sacred was our sacred rendezvous, and your ferocious anger when you found we weren't like you. But if I should make an act of faith in a voice both firm and clear that there is something sacred to me, you start drowning in your beer. What is sacred to you, brother? What is sacred to your heart? Is Australia just a quarry for the bauxite belts to start, where the forests are forgotten and the tinkling of the bell bird in the mountains? It's just something more to sell. Ah, brother, I'm searching for the sites sacred to you, but the rivers, clear as crystal, smell like sewerfuls of spew from the pump and pipe polluters and the nukes that fleck the foam. Or would you let a man in dirty boots go walking through your home? Sacred. Sacred means that. Sacred. It's a place where spirits rise with the rainbow wings of sunset on the edge of paradise. Sacred? Well, that's my mother. That's my daughter. That's my son. Sacred? Well, the dreaming whispers hope for everyone. In the silence of the grottos of Australia's mighty land, stand with the first Australians. Stand together, hand in hand, open eyes to endless beauty and to spirits far and near, for Australia is my country. It is sacred to me here. Ah, brother, I'm searching for the sites sacred to you, where you walk in silent worship, and you whisper poems too, where you tread like me in wonder, and your eyes are filled with tears, and you see the tracks you've travelled down your 50,000 years.
In the final pages of Ned Kelly, A Short Life, Ian Jones writes, "In the farthest corner of the continent from the Kelly country, the Yarralin people of northwestern Australia have taken Ned Kelly into their dreaming. The Dreamtime figure who evokes Jesus, Noah and Moses is also present in the age of European settlement. He dies as a champion of the Aboriginal people, a white man who was a shaper of the black man's land. The Aboriginal people affirm that Captain Cook is long dead, while Ned Kelly, because he is concerned with freedom, dignity and true justice, lives on."
Here you go. For those people, one person who said that they're still having a little trouble hearing us, I'm sorry. I don't know that I can change anything else. I've turned the volume right up. Maybe, I hope you can get some more volume at your end. We're working hard to get the YouTube right to this tonight as well. So if you do really have to leave, I'm really sorry, but the YouTube will be up soon.
And the YouTube's being recorded through different mics and a different camera. So.
Yeah, we're doing nothing unusual with our normal setup for Facebook anyway. And it's nice to see you, Jocelyn, but if you are having trouble donating and don't have PayPal, credit cards still work through the PayPal site. So, yes, for those other people, the way we've been running the Saturday streamings is they're free, but donations are so good. They've kept us going, guys. So we really appreciate it. And some people have been so generous. And a little helps a lot. And a lot, well, helps enormously. And if you do want to donate, you just follow the button through on PayPal. And
you will get to a place where you can use a card. No problem. Yeah. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, if you have a little patience to get going. Now, we're going now to the Kelly Gang. And we're going to linger a little bit more on the 11th of the 11th, 1880. But we're going to take 2 songs to get there. Some people have Jerilderie as a bit of a sacred site or an important place. Ned Kelly's father, Red Kelly, and Frank the Poet I've mentioned already were at Port Arthur together. And when Ned Kelly and Joe Byrne at Jerilderie wrote that great work, a wild piece of literature, the Jerilderie Letter, they quote from Frank the Poet's Moreton Bay. There's also a traditional version of that song floating around in Kelly country at the time. It was finally learnt from Simon MacDonald in Creswick. But in this case, it's tempting to imagine Frank passing it on to Red Kelly and Red Kelly carrying that up with him to Victoria and maybe telling those stories of Moreton Bay to his assembled clan there at Greta, perhaps. And of course, while Ned and Joe were writing that Jerilderie letter, Dan Kelly and young Stevie Hart, the larrikins, the young larrikins, were trick riding up and down the main street of Jerilderie on their horses, standing in the saddle, all the good stuff, and singing out, "Here's to the good old days of Dan Morgan and Ben Hall." As Chloe sings this song, The Kelly Gang, there's so many verses that we've found for this song. This is just a few of them. I'll throw in just a little bit of the Jerilderie letter here and there.
Yes. Come all you sons of liberty, the news is going round. That on the bold Ned Kelly's head they've set £1,000. For Steve Hart and Dan Kelly, 500 they will give. But if that sum was doubled, I'm sure the Kelly boys would live. It was in November 78, the Kelly boys came down after shooting Sergeant Kennedy. They rode into Euroa town to rob the bank of all its gold. Was their idea that day, and blood horses they was mounted on to make their getaway. Ned Kelly walked into the bank, a pistol in his hand, and over £1,000 on demand. Likewise the ammunition. The bald Ned Kelly said, and get on the go and don't be slow, or I'll shoot you through the head. An Afghan hawker they captured next, as everybody knows. He come in handy to the gang by fitting them out with blows. And off their worn out rags, my boys, they made a few bonfires and then destroyed the telegraph by cutting down the wire. They raced into Jerilby town about 12 o'clock at night. They caught the troopers in their beds, gave them a hell of a fright. They held them up at pistol point, and I'm ashamed to tell, they marched them along in their nightshirts and they locked them in a cell. The next morning, dressed in troopers' clothes, still owners of the ground, they took their horses to the forge, had them shod free all round. They led them back and mounted, and their plan turned out so well. They strolled along the main street and stuck up the Royal Hotel. The Royal Hotel.
For this bit of the Jerilby letter, I like to picture Ned in the Royal Hotel taking suggestions. And in the letter he ended up calling the authorities a parcel of big, ugly, fat-necked, warm-headed, big-bellied, magpie-legged, narrow-hipped, small-footed sons of Irish bailiffs and English landlords.
They're robbing over, they mounted them and made a quick retreat. They swept away with all their loot along down Morgan's old beat. And where they are now, well, I don't know, and if I did I wouldn't tell. So now until I hear from them, I bid yous all farewell. Bid yous all farewell.
Here's the bit from, it's referencing Frank the Poet's verse, Simon MacDonald's song. In the letter they said, all true blood, bone and beauty were doomed to Port Macquarie, Tarrangabby and Norfolk Isle and Emu Plains, and in those places of tyranny, condemnation, many a bloomin' Irishman, rather than subdue to the Saxon yoke, were flogged to death and bravely died in servile chains, but true to the shamrock and a credit to Paddy's land. I'm a widow's son, outlaw, my orders must be obeyed. And Ned Kelly was hanged on the 11th, 10 a.m. on the 11th of the 11th, 1880. And the legend is that his last words were, "Such is life." People much smarter and more knowledgeable than me have told me repeatedly that they were not his last words, that we know what his last words were. And they were, I suppose it's come to this, which is subtly different and to me much stronger.
There, that'll keep you busy for the rest of the weekend.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Start the debate going.
To commemorate, to remember, in remembrance of that day. We're going to sing a contemporary song written by Martin McKenna. He wrote this in 2006. We heard him singing it unaccompanied at the National Folk Festival, and it just floored us. The minute we heard a verse, we thought, got to get that one. And he was kind enough to share his song with us. He calls his song Three Fine Sons, Ellen Kelly's Lament. Now, the song was sparked by, for Martin, when he was at the big jail there in Melbourne on one of the tourist tours, and he found out a heartbreaking fact that Ellen Kelly, at 10 a.m. on the 11th of the 11th, 1880, was rostered on to do the prison laundry just one big stone wall away from where Ned was being murdered. Perhaps you don't think Ned was murdered. If that's the case, you're stronger than me. Yes, and so she was Ellen, who lived for a long time into the 1920s with these memories and feelings of the 11th of the 11th, long enough to see the next Remembrance Day that we'll talk about. Yeah, she was doing the laundry.
Joy, the widow's bread. Jim's been jailed, Dan lies dead. Now they come to take my Ned. If you believe the stories told, the Kelly gang had tons of gold. For every crime across this land was blamed upon a Kelly hand. Wash away the dirt and stain, wash away the hurt and pain, wash away the bloody crown, the English heel that holds us down, wash away the tyrant law that feeds the rich and starves the poor. 3 fine sons I have raised, a mother's joy, the widow's bread. Jim's been jailed, Dan lies dead. Now they come to take my Ned. They say that justice wears a blind, with even hand her cause does find. Well, I've seen her works, and I'll be bound, she smells the poor and grinds them down. Wash away the dirt and stain, wash away the hurt and pain, wash away Fitzpatrick's lies, for they began this sorry tale. Wash away Judge Barry too, Sergeant Steele and Melbourne Jail. Joy, the widow's bread. Jim's been jailed, Dan lies dead. Now they come to take my Ned. Behind these walls the chaplain prays, may God have mercy on his soul. The warders lead my Ned in chains. This man, my boy, these arms would hold. Wash away the dirt and stain, Wash away my hurt and pain. Wash away Glenrowan in these prison walls, they hold me in. Wash away Stringy Bark Creek, one less shirt to wash next week. 3 fine songs.
And so we come to the 11th of the 11th, 1918. If you've been following the Saturday streamings along, you might have caught up on a little bit of what Henry Lawson had to say about the war. But before we get to Henry's poem called Victory, here's a little bit from Bill Gamage's Broken Years. Wonderful book. You've probably learned more from that book than most of the other ones put together behind me. It's a Bill Gamage's collection of oral histories, so the people who were there and know what they're talking about it openly and frankly. And this particular copy is marked up by Denis Kevans too. It's got his writing all through it. He sent it to us as a gift. And so it's, yes, doubly worthwhile. Books are great, aren't they? Notes, annotations, marks, quotes, rubbish. Yeah, it's great.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is what Bill had to say himself.
Yes. He talks about Sydney. He says, on the evening of 11th of November, the true tidings at last reached them. Joy and relief fired the country. The streets crowded with faces, laughing, singing hymns and patriotic songs, cheering, weeping, exulting in victory and at the shackles cast from their minds. Order was impossible, and police in Sydney did not attempt to restore it until the 15th of November. The Kaiser was hung, executed, or burnt in effigy in many towns. Church bells pealed all day. Flags flew from almost every building. Processions formed and work halted as each man congratulated his neighbour on the victory of their arms. The years of trial and tragedy faded as peace lifted from them the weariest and heaviest burden Australians had ever endured.
And Bill then also gives us a report of the end of the war from a 2nd Battalion Corporal. So in all likelihood, someone who'd been there for the duration had possibly gone off thinking it'll be over by Christmas 15. And here we are in years later. They say that you could still recognise a surviving Australian soldier because the standards of recruiting, they were able to set the standards very high. So those first people who enlisted were big, strong, physically fit and able, at least when they went. But this is what our corporal had to say to contrast Chloe's description of the celebrations there. At about noon, I was told an armistice had been declared. It was hardly creditable. So, to all intents and purposes, the war is finished. Or seems so. And as one sits and ponders sadly at those many pals who are gone to that home from which no wanderer returns, it seems so strange that it should be the very flower of our manhood have paid the greatest price. Not willingly, for not one of them but longed to live, return home and forget, yes, just forget the horrors of the past. Now, we've mentioned a few times that we are of the opinion that the 19th century produced an incredibly progressive working body of people here in Australia. We had big issues, in particularly still with our relationship with the first Australians, but we had a great record by many other measures. Henry, as we've mentioned before, had in some ways was in favour of the war. He tended to flop around on that, but he wrote a poem at the end, and it's, as we listen to this poem, I think we could consider Henry's idea and our idea, many people's idea, that Australia has had a hidden republic since that time, that there's a big gap in Australia between the Tories, you could look at the federal cabinet now. They are a very, very narrow selection of Australian society. And so Henry wrote this, and he called it Victory, and it's about that same day, the 11th of the 11th. The schools marched in procession, in happiness and pride. The city bands before them, the soldiers marched beside. Starched white frocks and sashes and suits that high schools wear. The Boy Scout and the Boy Lout and all the rest were there, and all flags save Australia's flag waved high in sun and air. The girls' high school and grammar school and colleges of stone flew all flags from their walls and towers, all flags except our own. And down here in the alleys where premiers never come, nor candidate, nor delegate, nor sound of fife and drum, they packed them on the lorries, seared children of the slum. Each face seemed soiled and faded, though scrubbed with household soap, and older than a mother face, but with less sign of hope. The knowledge of things evil, of drunken wreck and hag, of sordid sounds and voices, the everlasting nag, of men without a battle song, of men without a flag. They breed a nation's strength behind each shabby little door, where rent collectors knock for aye, Christ shall knock no more. The sounds that hurt the mother's heart affright the children's heart. Alarm clocks on an empty tin, the tin tray on a chair, for weary folk are hard to wake in hot and heavy air. They sang in pride's procession that mammon might endure. Wistful singing faces, the children of the poor. Hideous fiends of commerce, ghouls of business strife. I wait the coming of the things that wake the land to life. The flag without a cross or bar, the drum without a fife. Henry never leaves any doubt, really. We're going to do a medley of pieces now that refer to the end of the Great War. We won't linger too long tonight on remembering the First World War, but I could, if you've not watched the Riderless Horse show from 3 or 4 weeks ago, then that's there on YouTube to be seen, where we spend an hour and a half thinking about that conflict. The first piece here is another short poem, in this case a short poem from Denis Kevans, and it doesn't mention Peter Lalor before, and he's leading the rebellion at Eureka. Well, in this case, Denis is writing about Peter Lalor's grandson. Tune this up a little. Captain Lalor, haven't you lost your way? What are you doing here? 400 yards from the peak of Channel. Peter Lalor's sword by your side, your grandfather's pride. But what are you doing here? 400 yards from the peak of Channel. 26th of April, 1915. Far from your farm in Victoria, so green. Oh, Captain Lalor, haven't you lost your way? Oh, what are you doing here? Your eyes filming, your fingers unlacing from the handle of Peter Lalor's sword, so carefully balanced and restored. You spent cartridges all around. Your 4 mates lie without a sound. Oh, Captain Lalor, what are you doing here? 400 yards from the peak of Channel.
one everlasting care. No more estaminays to sing in, no mademoiselles to make me gay. Civvy life's a bleedin' failure. I was happy yesterday.
Parody of What a Friend We Have in Jesus, or those are the tunes they had and they used them. This one is also a parody. I can imagine the first enlistees heading off to war to fight for Mother England may very well have been happy to sing Take Me Back to Dear Old Blighty. I can even imagine at the end of the war, one or two out amongst 50 who might have been happy to sing Take Me Back to Dear Old Blighty.
While still in France, maybe.
But by the time they'd waited for a boat to go home in England for 2 years, I can't imagine them singing that anymore. But they did sing this parody.
Take me back to dear old Aussie, put me on a boat to Sydney town. Take me over there, dump me anywhere. Brisbane, Melbourne, Adelaide, Perth, well, I don't care. I just want to see my best girl. Cuddling up again we soon shall be. Blighty is a failure, take me to Australia. Aussie is the place for me, I tell ya. Blighty is a failure, take me to Australia. Aussie is the place for me. This poem was written for Remembrance Day 1924 by a young lady who was at that stage 21, Mary Edgerly. 6 years today since last the guns took their red toll on Flanders soil. 6 years since brute in human form, tall spire and meadow did despoil. And 6 years dead, the war's red light. Yet still I hear the guns at night. 9 years today he said goodbye, with jesting word from heavy heart, and smiling lips that hid the pain, and hands that clung and fell. 9 years today we laughed at fate, but still I hear him at the gate. Years have gone by since he fell. They say he dropped in no man's land, in onward rush, intent to kill, a soldier's weapon in his hand. 8 years ago I lost my all, but all my life I see him fall.
3 remarkable verses from Mary Edgerly from 1924. One last thought on the First World War, and it comes from a very short poster, an anti-conscription poster, made by the Wobblies. 2 referenda, of course, both defeated, including defeated, by the way, by those who'd seen action on the Western Front. Didn't want conscripts, it seems. But let's just consider this a little insight into what tends to go on at the time of wars, and from us personally, a vote for peace. This is what the Wobblies wrote. To arms, capitalists, parsons, politicians, landlords, newspaper editors, and other stay-at-home patriots. Your country needs you in the trenches. Workers, follow your masters. Mm-hmm. That particular poem is a point of contact for us with the great Alistair Hulett. He heard us doing that in 2009 as part of our Riderless Horse show. Just that poem and the show. He came to see the show, and it started a relationship that was all too short. I mean, he'd been a hero of mine and we'd met briefly through the years. But that tour, that last tour, as it turns out, for Alistair back home here to Australia, was his last, and very sadly so. It was such a shock. That was in November, Majors Creek as well, and we'll talk about that in a second. But to hear that he'd passed away as soon as he did, 28th of January, 10 years ago this year. So, and with Alistair, we come to the Remembrance Day, well, the first remembrance of an event that I was actually alive for. I was 6. I'm sure you've guessed already. I was 6 in 1975, and that was the double dissolution and the sacking of Gough Whitlam. I could bore you with the long list of achievements of that particular government, but rather than doing that, I would I'm tempted just to tell one personal story. I had 17 changes of school. Most of those, all but 3 of them, were in primary school, and then high school we slowed down a bit, but we were still moving around quite a lot. Rural, working class, working on farms. The family was a lot of that time. And my life was transformed. No one in my family had ever been near something like a university. That's pretty much still the case, actually, except for me. My life was transformed by a string of teachers with some transformative teaching, who I worked out later, many of them, not all, but many of them were what I started to call Gough's teachers, because they were like me. They grew up in reasonably sort of battlers' households and had only been able to go to university because of the changes and the introduction of university, universal university. And that, amongst many other things, I'm still mates with some of those teachers, a couple of those teachers, even all these years later. I still thank them every day for the resources they threw at my hungry but kind of misguided head. And we're going to sing Alistair Hulett's song, because he'll say more about Gough than we could.
And how he felt. Yes. And you might have seen Jason's shared the magnificent post of Alistair with the band, Roaring Jack, playing this song. It's worth a look if you have time and haven't seen it. Look it up. And it was played on, mainstream television too.
Yes.
There's something.
There's something indeed. Yeah, so here's Alistair and Roaring Jack, which is where I first come across Alistair and Roaring Jack in the 80s. He wrote this one in 82, and he called it the Ballad of 1975. I mean, like I say, I was only a very young kid, preschool, but and then just at school when I went to school at 4, so I guess I was into school. But I remember things like Medibank. I remember, I'm just a little kid. That's how much impact. For those who are a little older than me, perhaps you'll remember with a lot more detail. I'm sure you will. But I remember it. It must have been quite a time, eh?
1, 2, 3.
I remember the day I was no more than a boy, working in an oxide plant at the back of North Fitzroy. Bert Gilchrist told the gaffer, because Bert Gilchrist had the clout. He said, they've given Gough the bullets, now the lads are walking out. And we walked right off that job while the gaffer held the door. We watched it on the telly in a TV rental store. 'Twas one hell of a situation, the kind you just can't gauge. There was Gough on the steps of Parliament saying, now maintain the rage. In the year of the double dissolution, drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it out. Oh, there was violence in the air as I walked back home that night. Everyone you'd meet was getting ready for the fight, saying if they're out for trouble, then trouble's what they'll get. We started out a colony, but they think we're a colony yet. In the year of the double dissolution, drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it out. As the weeks went by, the anger turned to mild relief. Locks were freed like magic, and I watched in disbelief to see a scam so blatant, so jacked up and full of holes, and the people in their thousands endorsed it at the polls. In the year of the double dissolution, drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it out. Some said they had it coming, some were closer to the mark, who spoke about conspiracy, sinister and dark. But history records it, and the story will be read. How we let them take democracy and stand it on its head. In the year of the double dissolution, for drinking in the streets gave way to doubt. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it out. Australia voted in a revolution, then stood back and let the fat cats push it out. Thank you, Alistair, for saying it so well yet again. Yet again. Yes, so Alistair was a great hero of ours, and yes, it was at Macquarie Uni I first heard him as a young kid. Oh, I didn't know you could get that angry. I didn't even know you needed to be that angry. I was angry. I'd taught myself enough to be angry, but he was angrier, and he was eloquent, and it was a great mix, and I fell in love with Roaring Jack. Then 10 years later, we crossed paths again at Woodford, our first folk festival, and who was going on before us but Alistair? And one more, thanks guys, Alistair. And it wasn't until he sang this song that Oh, that's Alistair from Roaring Jack. We weren't booked for Woodford. We just bought tickets. Our first folk festival. We were all punk rock and rollers, psychedelic stuff and crazy, heavy, big drum stuff. Anyway, we'd made our first CD with just an acoustic guitar, and the fella said, "Oh, that bloke over there at the Troubadour will give you a gig." And it was Andrew Patterson, and changed our life. 180 degrees we went.
It was about that hot on the stage, actually. Blue tent this far from your head.
True.
Yeah.
But the thing was, when I realised that it was Alistair, and they were on before us, and it was Alistair and Dave Schwarbrick, so I'm watching them, and I'm fully aware that I'm watching genius at work, and I'm fully aware that we weren't, And anyway, we walked on the stage. It was a lovely gig, and people listened. We told stories. We sold CDs. It was wonderful. But it was Alistair, and all he could make me think, and Dave, but Alistair, all I could think was, well, I want to do this forever, this folky thing, but I'm going to have to do a lot better because of Alistair's bar that he had set. Now, this is the song. This is the song that Alistair wrote. And we think of Alistair as we sing it. That tour in 2009 was the first time, as I mentioned earlier, that we met over two arms and had some long conversations. First at Jamboree, some other festivals, and then at Majors Creek. And when we waved goodbye, I don't know the truth of any of this, but the talk was, admittedly over a few red wines, was that Alistair was, "I'm coming home and maybe we can do some things together." Oh, I was so thrilled, so excited. To hear that he had passed away so soon after was heartbreaking for me. So we're going to sing this one for the Remembrance Day that we shared with Alistair at Majors Creek. I emceed a concert there where we did the Riderless Horse show, as we often did at Majors because of the date. And Alistair sang this song that day as well. And it's one of his best, and I'm sure there'll be some chorus singing up there.
Yes, you can sing it too. Definitely. We've played this at a lot of gigs over the years, with various bands, various lineups. Australia Days.
Always on Australia Day. If we take a gig on the 26th of January, you can guarantee this one will come out. You came to this country in fetters and chains, outlaws and rebels with numbers for names, and on the triangle were beaten and hanged, blood-stained the soil of Australia. Oh, dookies and duchesses, flash lads and whores, you worked their plantations, you polished their floors, lived in their shadow and died in their wars. Blood-stained the soil of Australia. Does it quicken your heart to see tar and concrete cover the tracks of the old bullet train? Or have you grown so heartless to christen it progress when the Swaggies have all waltzed Matilda away? Dogs from your own native home, hardship and poverty force you to roam over the bracken and over the foam, where blood stained the soil of Australia, and caught in the fever for fortune and fame. You forced the poor blacks to suffer the same, imprisoned on missions or hunted for game. Blood-stained the soil of Australia. Does it quicken your heart to see tar and concrete cover the tracks of the old bullet train? Or have you grown so heartless to christen it Progress, when the Swaggies have all waltzed Matilda away. Oh, it's 200 years since you came to this land, betrayed by the curse, with the black velvet band, and still to this day you just don't understand our blood-stained soil of Australia. Korean, white, old Australian and you, brothers and sisters of every hue. The future is ours, take the wealth from the few, raise the red flag in Australia. Let it quicken your heart to beat, 'cause the road's at your own feet. Travel it lightly and travel it well, and don't speak of success or christen it Progress, till the Swaggies can all waltz Matilda's well. No, don't speak of success nor christen it Progress, till the Swaggies can all waltz Matilda's well. What a great song it is. And we come to the next Remembrance Day that we will think of. That song was a favourite of Chloe's dad's, Brian Newton. Despite his politics being very different from raising the red flag in Australia, I think he could see the eloquence, the brilliant melody and lyrics of Alistair, and would request this song often and talk about this song to other people. We didn't even know he was doing that, but since he's gone, we've heard that he did. So, yes, it was Majors Creek in 2017. And we're going to introduce Megan and then Joanna now for their contribution to the show. It was Majors Creek 2017, and we've mentioned that a lot. Big Remembrance Day. We had done a big Lawson show on the Saturday, and we walked past the beautiful church, St Stephen's there at Majors Creek, and I mentioned earlier the foundation stone for that beautiful church was laid on the 10th of the 11th, 1870, so near enough to that date to spark an idea of a show similar to what we've done for you this evening, where we look at some different Remembrance Days in Australia from some different perspectives. And we did. We sang it in the church there, had a lovely crowd, and it was quite a festival. We had a really good time. Majors Creek has two real venues, as I mentioned, the beautiful church and the hall. So it's a grand festival. We look forward to seeing it spring back to life post-COVID. We hope so. When we got home, we didn't hear from Brian for a day. To fill you in, Brian only lived 2-3 doors down from us in the fourth house along. And once you didn't hear from him for a couple of days, we got worried. And it did turn out that we'd lost him, that very suddenly and with a great deal of shock. He was fit and happy, and he'd been up at the Dorrigo Festival just 2 weeks before, I think, just before. And so it was a shock. It was something we're still getting over. But around this Remembrance Day time, something looms very large for us personally. Now, one of Brian's great gifts to us, or something we shared as well, was a great love of writing, language, literature, poetry, song. Brian had an extraordinary breadth of knowledge about some great poets and some great books, and really knew his stuff, you know. And he not only could we share some of that, including a love of Henry Lawson, but he passed it on to the next generation down from us. Megan and Joanna both have a poem that they learnt from that book and indirectly from Brian. And I think Joanna's going to come up first. Oh, terrific. All right. So I should explain. Hi, Joanna. Say good day.
Hello. Welcome. Welcome, students.
Welcome, students.
Welcome.
This is homeschooling paying off, I think. Yeah, so I should be clear. Joanna's going to do a poem called When I Was One. And, well, that poem, When I Was One, Joanna has had to add a line to every year. I won't say any more, but I'll just... Joanna, do you want to kick off your poem and give us When I Was One as it stands while Joanna is 8? Okay.
Okay. This is I Milne.
Milne.
When I was 1, I was just begun. When I was 2, I was nearly new. When I was 3, I was not quite me. When I was 4, I was not much more. When I was 5, I was barely alive. When I was 6, I could do lots of tricks. When I was 7, I ate lots of difficult. But now I'm 8, and Cliff, I think I'll say forever.
Thank you, Joanna.
Thank you, friends.
For those who didn't quite catch the poem, it'll be up on YouTube and we'll boost. Yeah, she's done a good job recalling that poem today. Of course, she can't stay 8 forever and ever. In fact, she can only stay 8 for another week and a half. And then we're going to be looking for another line to rhyme with 9. I think we've got it. All right, Megan's got one for you now. I'll leave you with Megan, and you're going to do Sir Brian.
I think so, yeah.
Okay, all right.
What you going to say? When I was 9, I needed more lines.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, this is one that I found, as Des said, in that book. I was pretty young. All the grown-ups were talking about boring grown-up things. So I ran off to hang out with the poetry books, which were being more interesting at the time. And I found this poem and I went, this one! I want to know this one. And I think Brian found that a little bit amusing, considering subject matter. But yeah, this is one of my very favourites. So Brian had a battle axe with great big knobs on. He went among the villagers and blipped them on the head. On Wednesdays and on Saturdays, but mostly on the latter day, he called at all the cottages, and this is what he said. I am Sir Brian. Tingling. I am Sir Brian. Rat-a-tat. I am Sir Brian, as bold as a lion. Take that and that and that. Sir Brian had a pair of boots with great big spurs on, a fighting pair, of which he was particularly fond. On Wednesdays and on Fridays, just to make the street look tidy, he'd collect the passing villagers and kick them in the pond. I am Sir Brian. Splish splash. I am Sir Brian. Splish splash. I am Sir Brian, as bold as a lion, as anyone else for a wash. Sir Brian woke one morning and he couldn't find his battle axe. He walked into the village in his second pair of boots, and ere he'd gone a dozen paces, the whole street was full of faces, the villagers all round him with ironical salutes. You are Sir Brian? My. You are Sir Brian? Dear. You are Sir Brian, as bold as a lion? Delighted to meet you here. Sir Brian went a journey and he found a lot of duckweed. They pulled him out and dried him, and they blipped him on the head, and they took him by the breeches, and they hurled him into ditches, and they pushed him under waterfalls. And this is what they said. You are Sir Brian, don't laugh. You are Sir Brian, don't cry. You are Sir Brian, as bold as a lion. Sir Brian the lion, goodbye. Sir Brian struggled home again and chopped up his battle axe. He took his pair of fighting boots and threw them in the fire. He's quite a different person now he hasn't got his spurs on, and he goes about the village as B. Botany, Esquire. I am Sir Brian. Oh, no. I am Sir Brian? Who's he? I don't have a title. I am Botany, just plain Mr. Botany B.
Yay.
Great job, Megan.
Thank you, Megan Jean. Thank you very much. Yeah, something in that poem for all of us. And yeah, Megan's been doing that one since she was very little. Nice to hear it again. Look, we've got time to do 2 more for you. Yeah. If the technology keeps letting folks down, we hope that the YouTube clip this week will be a step up Facebook is just quietly, the technology of Facebook seems to change every week, and it's driving me a little bit crazy. Chloe said earlier, I think we're only going to do 2 more of these Saturday night streamings.
Yep.
We really love them, but it drives us just a bit mad to get the technology working. Is proving difficult. So perhaps if we come back in the new year, or if we do, we might just pop up impromptu over the summer. I don't know, but we probably would have a decent break now and come back. That'll be 22 hour-and-a-half shows that we've put up. So we've got lots of different ways to edit them, and hopefully spend some time sort of giving you some different ways into those songs. But for now, we're going to sing.
We're going to sing. Finally, shame. This Henry Lawson poem was a favourite of my dad's. He used to come along to the Poets' Breakfast and screwed up all his courage to get on the stage, shaking like a leaf, so I know where I get that from. And the poem that he really loved that we never learnt was When the Army Prays for Watty. And we finally worked up a version of Watty, and we'll play it for my dad.
When the kindly hours of darkness, save for light of moon and star, hide the picture on the signboard of Doty's Horse Bazaar. When the last rose tint is fading on the distant mulga scrub, then the army prays for Watty at the entrance of his pub. Now I often sit at Watty's when the night is very near, with a head that's full of jingles and the fumes of bottled beer. For I always have a fancy that if I am over there when the army prays for Watty, well, I'm included in the prayer. Watty lounges in his armchair in its old accustomed place, with a fatherly expression on his round and passive face. And his arms are clasped before him in a calm, contented way, and he nods his head and dozes when he hears the army pray. Wonder, does he ponder on the distant years and dim, or his chances over yonder when the army prays for him? Has he not a fear connected with that warm place down below, where according to good Christians all the publicans should go? But his features give no token of a feeling in his breast, save of peace that is unbroken and a conscience well at rest. And we guzzle as we guzzle long before the army came, and these loafers wait for shouters and they get there just the same. It would take a lot of praying, lots of thumping on the drum, to prepare our sinful straying, erring souls for kingdom come. But I love my fellow sinners, and I hope upon the whole that the army gets a hearing when it prays for Watty's soul. Yes, and Brian had great taste, and we know that because he considered Lawson a genius, and so do we. And that's a poem from Burke, obviously, from that great darling river town, Come and Have a Drink. We're going to finish with where we started. We've come a full circle. We've come around to another song we learnt off Jacko Kevans, and another song referring back to Ned Kelly. Thinking of the 11th of the 11th, 10 a.m. on the 11th of the 11th, 1880. And, well, a light-hearted look in some ways, a little bit light-hearted. It started off as a song written by smiling Billy Blinkhorn, but I think Jacko, it's a substantial rewrite of the words that Jacko did, so we give him a lot of credit here too. A song from Smilin, Billy Blinkhorn and taciturn Jacko Kevans. Great team they made, and we've since panel beaten the song quite a lot too. The words are tongue-in-cheek, slightly tongue-in-cheek, but we're going to mash this song together with another tune from Central Victoria called The Prince of Wales Schottische. Yes, The Prince of Wales Schottische in a Kelly song, and that's very tongue-in-cheek.
Indeed. They took him down to Melbourne. They wouldn't go in bail. On the 11th of the 11th, 1880. They hung him from the rafters of the Russell Street jail singing, "Oh, Ned Kelly,
it's easier to do today. Oh, Ned Kelly, you don't even have to run away." Sing along, it's "Oh, Ned Kelly, it's easier to do today. Oh, Ned Kelly, you don't even have to run. You don't even have to run. You don't even have to run away." Thanks, folks. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your patience.
Thanks for your patience. It sounds like it's been needed out there, but for those who are keen to catch up on YouTube, we hope that what we've captured here is a better quality YouTube clip, which is where we've been disappointed with Facebook in the past. But it seems like every week Facebook updates itself and the technology is changing. But we appreciate the company and the thoughts. We really do. And whether you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, if you've got any comments, send them through. These concerts are free, but we do appreciate the donation. It sounds like a couple of people have even had some trouble donating tonight. So, yeah, what a night. What a night. But we'd like it if you'd persist.
Yeah, keep trying.
Of course, we appreciate any donations, but mostly we just love the company. We are coming down to the Loaded Dog 2 weeks yesterday, Friday night, the 27th. I can't wait. It's Plugged Dog.
Plugged Dog?
Yeah, we've got PA.
Leichhardt Bolo?
I believe the in-house tech and stuff at the Leichhardt Bolo is really great PA. So it should be a smooth transition from the beautiful acoustic venue into a PA situation. We can't wait to see you all. And if we've never seen you before, come and say g'day. But you do have to book. It's a COVID-safe gig.
Limited numbers, space, all that sort of thing.
Very limited numbers, and you have to book. You can't just walk up on the night, I believe. You have to actually...
You have to book.
Yeah.
You can pay on the night, but, book your seat.
Okay. I'll throw an email address in there for Sandra that where you can book. Anyway, thanks.
It's also on the front page in our events there. You can find all the information. So.
That's right. So if you are on the webpage donating or buying an album, you can also see where you can catch us in person in Sydney if you're anywhere around Sydney town or willing to drive. Next week, we're going to do...
Shearers.
Yeah. Too Many Bloody Songs About Shearers by Far, Volume 1. And we'll finish off the series of 22 Saturday streaming concerts with another variety night. They've been really good fun, those. So we thought, what better way to go out than one of those light-hearted country hall style variety nights. We'll get the kids doing some stuff and it'll be lots of fun. Thank you very much, everybody.
Cheers, folks.
Yeah, stay well.
Good night.